Hey, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Register's Kettle podcast. I'm Reg reporter Brandon Vigliarolo, and with me this week is cybersecurity editor Jessica Lyons and senior reporter Tom Claburn to talk about another rather serious and potentially unsolvable problem with the large language model paradigm, prompt injection attacks. Welcome to both of you.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, welcome back. Glad to have you back. Frequent guests on the show here. We don't have that large of a group to pull from. So, Jess, anyways, so our conversation this week was spurred on by an exclusive you published on Wednesday about some new form of prompt injection attack that was discovered by a security researcher you chatted with. So, let's start there. Tell us about that new form of prompt injection that he found.
Great. Yeah. So there's these two types of prompt injection. First of all, there's direct, and that's when you insert unwanted text directly into the prompt input, and that essentially tricks the machine into doing something it's not supposed to. That its guardrails are set up to prevent it from doing. And then you have indirect prompt injection, and that's a little sneakier. It's where you have these hidden prompts, and they're generally hidden inside a web page or PDF or something, and then you ask the agent to summarize or act on this, and it follows these hidden prompts as if they'd been entered directly by the user. So both of these are intended to trick AI systems into doing bad things, essentially.
Okay, so
So
direct is basically like me going to Anthropic,
and
Claude, and
saying,
then basically saying,
"Teach
"Hey,
me how to
do
build a
this thing you're not
bomb."
supposed to do." Right,
Right.
and then indirect would be me burying it on a web page, okay, and telling the agent to ingest that, and in through the process of ingestion, it reads it like a prompt.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So this week I spoke to a researcher. His name's Ananguan, and he found this new type that he is calling comment and control prompt injection. It's a type of indirect prompt injection, and it plays on command and control, and that refers to the infrastructure that attackers use to carry out attacks typically. So he's calling this comment and control because the entire attack, it runs inside GitHub. So what he was able to do, he was able to trick all of these AI agents that integrate with GitHub Actions into doing things that they're not supposed to, by inserting the prompt either in the pull request title or the comment. So that's where he's getting this comment and control. And so essentially, what it does, it doesn't require the attacker to have any external command and control infrastructure. They are able to control the GitHub data by injecting a prompt into the pull request title or issue body or issue comments. And then you have the AI agent running in GitHub Actions, and it processes this and executes the commands and leaks the credentials in GitHub comments. So it's all right there. And then you can't even be really sneaky and then go in and edit the pull request, or comments, essentially to get rid of this confidential info that it's leaking after the fact. And so he was able to find that, he could essentially use this to steal API keys and access tokens, and none of the vendors that he showed were susceptible to this. It targeted Claude Code Security Review, Google, Gemini, CLI Action, Microsoft GitHub Copilot. None of these vendors publicly disclosed this. So they changed the documentation, to say, "Hey, this is an issue," but they didn't assign CVEs, they didn't publish public advisories to alert people that this is something, that the AI agents can do that they're not supposed to.
Right. Okay. So basically, Anthropic, Microsoft, and Google all basically
Uh-huh.
ignored this guy, except they did update their documentation to say,
Yeah.
okay, this is something they can do, which seems to me, right, to be an indication that, oh, this is something fundamentally wrong with AI models. That, right, they can be tricked in this way, and there's really nothing we can do to stop them, or nothing we care to bother to do to figure out how to stop this. I mean, that right? That's what it seems like to me, like an emission that, yeah, okay, this happens. I don't know, Tom, what do you think? Does it seem like there's an
Yeah,
emission that prompt injections are here to stay?
Well, yeah, I mean, and you can see echoes of these kinds of admissions in all of the models. You look at the documentation; somewhere there's a thing that says, oh, well, by the way, these outputs aren't trusted. We
Mhm.
don't take any, we deny responsibility for it, or check your answers. I mean, the whole thing is just built on a swamp, and everyone's just saying, oh, we can't do the sort of construction review because it might reveal that the whole foundation is shaky. And pretty much everyone, I've heard for the past 3 years or so has said prompt injection is, not something we know how to fix.
Right,
And, it's just because these models can't tell the difference between, system data and, user data. And it's it's going to be a problem, and they keep denying it, and they keep saying, "Oh, we can mitigate it," and to some extent they can. You can add on a bunch of other stuff, but you're essentially trying to solve it with the same problem by putting a sort of a guardrail in using another AI system to watch out for certain patterns. But that's
Right.
that kind of responsive defense is not deterministic. I mean, it's not the same thing as like a permission system on a Linux system that says, your root, you can use this, or you're, in user land and you can't use this. It's not that
Right,
clear. And so
that's a pretty hard gate unless you manage to modify the user tables, right?
right.
But,
And
like,
so
the yeah, I mean, but, like, this seems like right, it's fundamental to the way these things are processing data, it's fundamental to the way they're processing tokens. Um, yeah, there's no good way to stop that. But, I mean, it
yeah,
seems like direct prompt injection has been pretty much, I feel like, mostly mitigated, right? I mean, feel like that's something that you can easily I mean, I'm sure there's
well,
times where, what turns out we were able to directly
yeah, I mean,
inject a
but
prompt, you
even
know?
even that, like, you can find people basically the more time if you spend a lot of time with these models
Mhm.
and, in like a long session, like maybe the first prompt it rejects, but you can always, there
Right.
are still people out there who try and use it. I mean, direct prompt injection is for breaking guardrails mainly. So if you
Right.
want to get to swear at you or do something, you can keep sort of at it and say, "Oh no, I'm a security researcher.
Right.
Honestly, you need to give me this access. You need to stop doing this." And these models eventually can be, steered in a direction that does something bad because none of these guardrails are fixed and really deterministic.
Yeah, which brings me to kind of a quote that I highlighted in your article, Jess, that I think was kind of informed the sort of the rest of this to discussion today, and that's and I think this maybe you were referencing something the researcher said, and I'm not sure, so I don't want to put words in your mouth or misattribute a quote to him, but you wrote, "Think of prompt injection as phishing, but for machines instead of humans, treating AI agents much like human employees," and it seems like that's where we're at with this, right? Like, there's something fundamental no one's going to patch phishing out of humans, right? Like we are
right.
not good bullshit detectors in a lot of cases, and it seems like AI is just as bad at that. Maybe that's because we taught it to understand language in the same way that we do, right? I don't know,
Right.
but it
Well,
seems
no,
like it's
he that was something that the researcher said, this
Mhm.
idea, it wasn't a direct quote, but to essentially treat prompt injection, don't think of it as prompt injection, which sounds really technical and confusing. Think of it as phishing, but it's for AIs instead of humans. And I thought that was so great because those are the two non-deterministic things in your environment, and both essentially want to do what they're told to do. They want to provide the output that their boss or their human who's giving them the prompts is seeking.
Yeah,
And
that's one of the we can get into that whole fundamental problem with AI too, right? Is that it will output something no matter whether
right,
it believes or knows it or not.
right. But so even if, we there's training, there's anti-phishing training for humans, and as these different examples come up, there's more training for the LLMs so that they don't fall for prompt injection attacks. But essentially, they're always learning, and the people who are trying to attack systems and people are always coming up with new creative ways to get them to do what they want. So I think that is a really good way to look at it, like the issue of phishing. It's really successful. It's a pretty low barrier to entry, and it's probably always going to be there. We
Mhm.
just have to keep up with the different ways that people are abusing it and train people and machines on how to spot it.
It's just basic, exploiting basic human psychology. It's just
Right.
now we have this new channel of technology to do it through. It's
Right.
just surprising that this AI thing we built that is supposed to be this amazing knowledge engine that's gonna solve all the world's problems is just as gullible as we are. It's kind of It's kinda shocking.
Yeah, and it gets worse as you start, expanding these systems into, sort of basic knowledge work. I mean, it's one thing in code where you've got, pull requests
Mhm.
and that kind of thing that you can kind of get with permissions. But when you start, saying, "Oh, process these emails and research documents," all of a sudden it's a ton of untrusted data that is going into the system, and the idea that you're going to catch all of it is, I think, just naive.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's if prompt injection really is as versatile and as variable as using natural language to try to, psychologically subvert a human, right? I mean, there's going to be no end to the kinds of attacks that people come up with. Like, speaking of another piece you wrote recently, Jess, there was one you wrote about a neural exec attack, I think you call it,
Right,
where
right.
there was something about, tricking, using AI, right, to trick AI, and it just kinda it seems like
Exactly.
that sort of classic adversarial AI, of the old
Mhm.
days, but sort of supercharged to come up with prompt injection to come up with prompts that it could basically hammer Apple Intelligence with until it gave the researchers what they wanted.
Right, right. This one was really interesting too. So it was this this method has been pioneered by RSAC, and essentially it's exactly what you said. It's using adversarial AI to optimize instructions, come up with the right trigger that is going to get the AI to do your bidding and do these things it's not supposed to, as opposed to having a human manually trying to figure out what's the best way, what's the most effective trigger. So it speeds up the process a lot because it's essentially optimizing the algorithm here,
Mhm.
and it makes it easier for the human who's spearheading the malicious campaign to find what's the right prompt to get the AI to do what it's supposed to. So, yeah, it's really fascinating because you have not only humans figuring out, here's an effective way to do prompt injection against an AI system, and then you also have them using AIs to help them find the best way to attack another AI system. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, it really especially in light of Mythos that we reported on
Mm,
last week, right? Anthropic's new cybersecurity AI that's supposed to be able to find, bugs in 0 days and basically, Tom, we talked about this last week, I think, when we were talking about, Mythos. But it's just one of those things that I don't know. Maybe I've not seen it yet, but I would be interested to see what Mythos can tease out of other AI models in terms of vulnerabilities, be they in their code or just prompt injection wise. Um, I imagine it would be a whole other realm of I really imagine like, a lot of AI is being used to supercharge cybercrime right now, right? It's being used to craft phishing messages, right? AI is increasingly being used to target humans for cybercrime. I just wonder when, we're going to pass that threshold of AI being used to target AI for cybercrime.
Yeah, I'm sure that's already happening. I mean, of
Oh,
course,
probably.
humans being the weak link. I mean, the asymmetry is the worst in people because our processing time is just so, limited, and it's, you want to get to the next email or get to the next project or do whatever, and if you're constantly bombarded by AI crafted attacks, it just, sooner or later you're going to slip up. Um,
Yeah.
right. I think, and
Just
that's
like an LLM, right?
yeah. And that's so interesting because I feel like that's what we're hearing a lot from the AI companies and the security vendors who are putting AI on their products, that you have to use AI to fight AI. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to keep up with the speed of the machines and the speed of the threats.
Right.
And then on the flip side, when there's an issue, as we've seen with prompt injection or any type of other security flaw in the models, then it's not our problem because it's a human issuing the command, or it's working as intended. This is what it's supposed to be doing. It's not really a flaw. So I feel like there's this disconnect that we're seeing a lot from the companies too, in terms
Mhm.
of everybody needs to use it. Oh, but the security, that's not on us.
Right.
That's on how you're using it.
But there's an interesting side effect to that. I mean, that the more AI enters into a system, the less people want to participate in it. And you see this in the open source system where they're getting, deluged by AI generated bug reports. And, the responses tend to be, just banning all AI contributions or figuring out some way to, get a human behind everything so that, the pace slows down and they're not bombarded. So in some ways, I think that the industry is going to shoot itself in the foot by pushing AI on everyone because people will leave that place because they just can't deal with the sort of pace of things.
Yeah, I mean, but is it because of the pace of the AI changing things, or do you think there's a certain level of a fundamental distrust in AI and what it can do to a
Well,
system once
I
it's
think it's
inside?
both. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like you can't, you just lose the capacity to deal with things if, the velocity of interaction reaches a certain point, and people need ways to moderate that so they're not getting 10,000 emails a day or pull
Mhm.
requests or whatever the automated input is.
Sounds like what you need is an AI.
Mm. Right. In which case, if it's just AI versus AI, you sort of stopped caring about it. I mean, you read your report, your log summary or something, and you move on. You're not going to be involved
Yeah.
in the whole process.
I think
Right,
also
and
too, Tom's written a lot about this as well in terms of AI's getting better at finding vulnerabilities.
Mhm.
And then when we saw with Mythos, it's finding these decades-old bugs that have been existing in some open source projects for years. But I think that there's part of the issue too is that nobody's really doing a very good job distinguishing between, is this a vulnerability that's likely to be exploited, or is this really complex attack chain that nobody's found it in 20 years? Is it all that likely? Is it
yeah.
necessary? Do we need to be finding and searching for all of these really theoretical
Yeah,
vulnerabilities
can
with
we
AI?
get a
Well,
real honest to God CVSS score on these things, like, to see
Right.
yeah,
how? Because that's the thing, something can be incredibly devastating, but if it's incredibly hard to exploit, then it's not as
yeah,
dangerous a vulnerability as it might sound at first glance. I've written about plenty of those, right, where at first you start looking into this vulnerability and you're like, "This sounds bad," and the more you read, like, "Wait, you gotta be on-prem, you gotta have administrator creden," like,
You
okay, there's
gotta
a
be,
lot
like,
of
on mission
ifs.
itself, right.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of ifs here before this is actually operationable.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. I did a piece yesterday on there's a company I think called Hackathon that the CTO developed a Chrome V8 exploit by attacking an old version of Chrome that was in Discord. I think it was Chrome 138, and it's basically showing that because this was an old version and there was already a CVE published, they could very quickly develop an exploit for it. And you know that he did that with Opus 4.6, and his point was not that essentially that don't worry about Mythos. That you can do this with a lot of these models,
Mhm.
and really what the signal here is that you have to change how you handle and process security because the old sort of processes don't work at this rate. You can't have these huge lags in
Patch
patching,
time.
and you can't you have to rethink like the timing of like if you publish a fix in an open source system but don't do the release immediately, that's an attack window right there
Mhm.
because there will be people reading that code with bots that will generate vulnerabilities in minutes. So you
Yeah,
have
how
to.
often do we hear, right, about a massive campaign that's going through and just, causing tons of money and losses and, huge institutions are getting busted into. And it turns out it's a 4, 5, 8-year-old vulnerability, right? And it's like if those are going to be operationalized so much faster now, it's like, yeah, sure, you're still going to hear about a 4 or 5 year old vulnerability being operationalized quick, but I mean, it's going to be even more rapidly with when new stuff. There was something recently that I feel like a vulnerability came out and it was operational like between 0 day and getting on um, the actual exploit list. It was like matter of just days.
It's right, I
It's
mean,
happening so quickly.
the patch window that people have between the time the security releases come out and their time that they have to patch it before somebody has reverse engineered an exploit is just shrinking so fast, and AI
Mhm.
is really effective at doing that and helping with that. And for years, everybody's been joking about Patch Tuesday and then Exploit Wednesday, and I mean, it's gonna be Patch
Patch
Tuesday and
Tuesday and
Exploit
exploit
Tuesday.
Tuesday
Right,
afternoon.
right, all of
Yeah.
the exactly.
Right. I mean, and there's a lot of sort of angst in the open source community about like how to deal with this. I mean, there was, people talking about how open source is dead, and I think it's you can argue both sides of that, but there are a lot more downsides now to having stuff done in the open if there's not follow through. I mean, if you're letting information out there that an automated attacker can use, it's going to create more problems. And security through obscurity has never worked, but maybe there's an argument for sort of more obscurity toward AI because if you let stuff get into the automated attack chain, it's got to be dealt with sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Yeah, and right now it feels like it's still humans trying to chase down AIs. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of AIs in the cybersecurity space, but it still feels like it's this, AI is being turned to evil more quickly than it's being turned to good. In the cybersecurity space, it feels
Well,
like
I
at
think that
least.
always happens because
Yeah.
the bad guys don't have the same legal restrictions or responsibility to their customers to release something that's safe. They just can throw anything out there and see what sticks. And so that's always been the case. I think that there's always a really quick uptick in attackers' use of new technologies just because it's easier for them to do so
Right. Well,
from a
Right.
it's also
legal
Yeah.
corporate standpoint.
Sure. Yeah.
it's also a good business model, release
Mhm.
something that changes the playing field and then sell the defense
Right.
to fix it.
Oh, so you're saying that OpenAI is playing both sides here? They're developing their
Well, I
own
mean,
exploit.
I think it's pretty clear if they're talking about how dangerous this thing is, and then trying to sell this to you know
Oh yeah.
for security
Right.
defense. There's a little bit of that going on.
We can't release this to the public, but for $6 million, it can be yours
Mhm.
exclusively. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's kind of I don't know. Yeah, it. But basically, it feels like what we have here is this whole new software paradigm. Large language models are everywhere now, but they can be undone just as easily in a lot of ways as a human. And it just seems like that's one of those sort of yeah, it's a new security paradigm, right? But like these things that can be undone just as easily as humans can move a million times faster than they can to
Right.
exploit things and yeah, it's really I don't know. I find prompt injections to be really fascinating just from a sheer like these things are so different from us, yet we design them in a lot of ways to understand language in a similar way to the way we do, and so naturally they're going to be exploitable in the exact same way too.
Yeah. Well, it's like they're designed, from all of the sort of human interaction on the internet for
Yep.
years, so it picks up all of our characteristics, but has none of our common sense. So it's kind of like you get the worst of all the world. It's like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just like so many online cyber scams now are just, like I said, a digital evolution of good old confidence tricks. It's
yeah,
Mhm.
we now have little tiny intelligences that are just as gullible as children running around being given the keys to the kingdom, and
right.
we're expecting people not to try to trick them out of those keys. It's just
Yeah.
yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see, and I'm sure this is one of those I feel like I'm looking back in Kettle episodes in the past few weeks now, and almost every single one has been about AI in some capacity. So I am sure that when the next prompt inject attack comes out, or when the next sort of paradigm in breaking AIs as easily as humans comes around, we will be here to discuss it on the Kettle. Until then, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.